Hello friends, this is Granny's GodPod number 60. A huge welcome to all my subscribers, especially those with patience and a long memory. If you're new to my channel, you won't know that it was many moons ago that I said I would talk about Nicodemus, but other GodPods overtook me, and I was also sidetracked by finding other information, not only about Nicodemus, but about the way that John wrote this passage in chapter 3 of his Gospel. Let's get started then. First of all, it is said that John expected us to find this story funny. But irony only works if you're in on it, and this is the purpose of the prologue in the first chapter. John lets us know up front what we are supposed to know. We are supposed to know more than the people described within, so that when the characters appear, we can compare what the characters understand with what the author intends us to understand. Nicodemus, then, was a son of Abraham, circumcised as a member of Israel, a Pharisee. He was a man of authority and a teacher, a member of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish ruling council. He came to Jesus at night, looking for answers, not to challenge him. Public questions were a serious challenge, and the Jewish officials had been losing face every time Jesus answered them. Since if you silenced your opponents, you gained the honour from the challenge. Nicodemus addresses Jesus as Rabbi, acknowledging that Jesus deserves the same level of respect as the rabbis who preached in the synagogue. He begins, "Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher who has come from God." He is probably not using what we would call the royal we, but we do know at least one other member of the Sanhedrin, Joseph of Arimathea, was in the Jesus camp. "Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher who has come from God, for no one could perform the signs you are doing if God were not with him." In his Gospel, John refers to signs rather than miracles. In Acts 2:22, Luke tells us that the miracles, wonders and signs showed that Jesus of Nazareth was a man accredited by God, that the miracles substantiated Jesus' claims to be the Son of God. Jesus knew that these signs wowed his audiences, but he also knew that a wow factor is short-lived. The hope of the world did not rely on the isolated healings in rural Galilee, but on the climactic miracle of his death and resurrection. The signs indicated a deeper truth about Jesus, so we can be confident to place our faith in him. Jesus said to Nicodemus, "Very truly I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God unless they are born again." Then Nicodemus, bless him, asks, "How can someone be born when they are old? Surely they cannot enter a second time into their mother's womb," he says. In the prologue, John introduces the image of new birth, with believers given the right to become children of God. That is, children born not of natural descent, but born of God in a spiritual sense. Since John has told us the answers already, we can be amused by Nicodemus' dumb questions. Nicodemus only relates what Jesus says to physical things, and seems not to understand that Jesus is talking about spiritual things. For us, the problems of earthly life can lead us to neglect higher things, like the gifts of the Spirit and our relationship with God. Jesus tries to explain to Nicodemus, "Very truly, I tell you, no one can enter the kingdom of God unless they are born of water and the Spirit. Flesh gives birth to flesh, but the Spirit gives birth to spirit. You should not be surprised at my saying, 'You must be born again.'" He continues, "The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit." Nicodemus still does not understand fully. "How can this be?" he asks. Maybe Jesus becomes a little exasperated when he says, "You are Israel's teacher, and do you not understand these things?" The number 3 is used to put a divine stamp of completion or fulfillment on a subject. And for the 3rd time, Jesus uses the phrase, "Very truly, I tell you, we speak of what we know, and we testify to what we have seen, but still you people do not accept our testimony." Does Jesus mean we, as in himself and the disciples, or himself as part of the Trinity? You people may mean Nicodemus and the rest of the Sanhedrin, or Israel as a whole. Jesus continues, "I have spoken to you of earthly things, and you do not believe. How then will you believe if I speak of heavenly things?" We know that Jesus' work on earth is a bit like a stone falling in a pond with ripples spreading far and wide. But sometimes he must have wondered if there would be any ripples. John does not tell us what Nicodemus thought or did after his meeting with Jesus. But we do hear of him again after the crucifixion, when he and Joseph of Arimathea, who was a secret disciple of Jesus through fear of the Jews, took Jesus' body away from the cross and bound it with linen cloths and spices, following the burial customs of the Jews. New to me is an apocryphal gospel of Nicodemus, named the Acts of Pilate. It only exists in its complete form from about the 4th or 5th century, and may have been based on some early works by various authors. The first part covers the trial and resurrection of Jesus, with narrative versions of the trial in Syriac, Armenian, and Coptic. Some Latin manuscripts have an appended letter of Pilate to Claudius, in which Pilate describes the crucifixion and gives an account of the resurrection of Jesus. The second part of this work is called the Harrowing of Hell, which I've not read. But the first part is interesting, and in it we find the names of some minor New Testament figures that are not named in the canonical text. The soldier who speared Jesus on the cross is named Longinus, and the 2 criminals crucified with Jesus are named Dismas and Gestas. Well, for someone who seemed rather a bit part player on the biblical stage, Nicodemus redeems himself in helping at Jesus' burial. As an eyewitness, though, it is a great shame his manuscripts can't be traced back to nearer the death of Jesus, which some say, according to the Julian calendar, happened at 3 p.m. on Friday the 3rd of April in 33 AD. All those number 3s giving a divine stamp of completion or fulfillment for the Messiah. That's all for now, folks.